Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start welcoming you here to GovSchool. We're going live on YouTube. Thank everybody for joining us both in the room today, but also in YouTube. If you happen to have the opportunity to subscribe, just reach down there or point down there, I guess it is, and subscribe for us. It'll help us out, and we certainly appreciate it. And at the end, if we do a good job, which we hope to do today, make sure you like this session. I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes. We got a full scale. In fact, I thought everybody was watching the soccer game because we sent out the alert, and we had I think hundreds of people tap onto that email we sent out and crashed our site for a few minutes and caught us by surprise. So we do appreciate the interest, though, and we apologize for that happening, but we'll try to keep that from happening. Frankly, I don't quite understand sometimes how all that works, but it didn't work today like it was supposed to. And so let me get this slide going. And I appreciate at the end of the session here, what I'll do is open up the opportunity for those in the room, the ability to ask questions. So here we are today, and my name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections. Been in this sector now as of July 1st. We've been here for 28 years, and so it's been a lot of fun. If you don't learn anything else today, I hope that you do learn that. I'll just come off here just quickly and say hello to everybody, but I hope you do learn that we enjoy what we do. We really do, and we like to work with our clients. And so if you have any questions, you just reach out to me, and I'll be glad to assist you or anybody on our staff will. We are located here in Atlanta, Georgia, and with normal business hours, but you can reach out also 24/7 on our email. And I'd like to focus today on the slides, so I won't show my image, but you'll see that I've got some experience behind under my belt. I've been doing this for just over 30 plus years. Practically, I think it's probably getting close to 40 years. But it's I've worked on some 400 contracts in 36 states and bid on those and won them. I've been on a lot more, in fact, but won those 400. And so I appreciate the opportunity to have been able to serve not only on the aggregation side of contracts, but also on the bidding side. And I think some of you may know, if you've attended any of my sessions, that I'm also have been honored with the ability to serve as an adjunct professor at the University of Georgia, where I teach in the graduate school program, and if you teach future contracting officers how to write the RFPs and bids that you respond to, as well as others who are going to be managing that in the School of Public Administration there. So I'm really, it's my alma mater, and I'm really appreciative of that. But so I'm bringing all that experience and to this discussion today, and to share with you, and hopefully we provide some information that you can take away and you can use. Today is the first of a series this whole week that I'll be doing at 4 p.m. And we're talking specifically about proposal structures and the documents themselves, and how to make sure that you are in compliance. You know, that you'll hear this terminology of non-responsive. Basically, you somehow or another you didn't do what you were required to do, and then all of a sudden you're not eligible to be considered for the award, and you don't want to have that happen. It's very frustrating. You put all that effort into it. This happened to me. You just sometimes it slips up, and you just don't want that to be a part of that. So I'm going to talk about that every day at 4 p.m. this week, including Friday. And so Friday, my crowds usually are a little bit lower, so therefore we'll record them. If you're not in your seat, it's perfectly fine. You can come back to the website. You'll be able to monitor those classes. I'm also doing another series, just generally about the makeup of these contract opportunities at 11 a.m. all week. And so once we get those completed, I will have conducted eight, let's see, four, eight, 16 classes where you can, they're stored online on top of hundreds of hours of videos we've prepared in the past, but these are all fresh for you to use in your capacity here. So let's get started here. Proposal structure and compliance matrix. Now, the first slide here really kind of just emphasizes why the structure and compliance is so important for the win. Okay, our number one objective has always been aggregation. We bring to the marketplace a fragmented marketplace, some 88,000 agencies that we're monitoring that have been even I think made more complex by these portals that have popped up, about 40 or so around the United States, who add to that fragmentation. And then you have systems that you're registered in and trying to make sure you're in compliance in. And sometimes you don't even know if the questions they're asking is more for the benefit of a private company or for the government itself. And in fact, oftentimes they're taking even these systems, they're taking your information and they're using it in ways that aren't to your advantage. And you have to watch out not only about the structure of the actual RFPs, but the structure of the portals and so forth that you're using to get access to information. And that becomes an important part of your business decisions as you determine which ones you're actually going to pursue. And I would just point out that over 40% of proposals are really eliminated for noncompliance. You don't want to be that's almost half. Okay. I mean, it's another big number. So you don't want to be in that pile. It gets, and now with AI and tools that you can use actually effectively, it actually has increased because uh, it- some people kind of think that with AI you can just drop in an RFP and say, spit me out a response, Mr. Claude or Mr. Chat, and they'll tell you how beautiful you are and how great you're doing, but then they're not in compliance. Because at the end of the day, what you're going to find is that governments are incremental in nature, and consequently, they're not going to be making changes as quickly as the systems that you're actually using. They just can't keep up with them. So the forms that they have, the processes, in fact, some of them are even require you now to certify that you're not using that type of technology. And then when you do, it's obvious. I mean, everybody can tell if you understand how these structures work. They'll just put you over there in that non-responsive pile, and you don't want to have that. So 40% of all proposals eliminated for non-compliance, and that's even before evaluation. Just to point that out. So when you're actually going through a evaluation, I had a client the other day passed. I think there was like seven different tests that had passed. They passed six of them, and then the seventh one, they were not they didn't weren't eligible to pass it, and so that was very frustrating. But they were able to overcome that, frankly. And you never know who you're going to get on the other end of the compliance structure, and how lenient they're going to be with you, and where they're going to give you some additional leeway, and where they're not. And so you can't risk that because government contracting officers are typically there to help you. It's very rare they're not, and so just be aware they generally do try to make things work out for you. But when you got a pool of 150 at a federal level, for example, responses, you can't. I mean, you're going to use that as one of the possible ways to eliminate those who just simply can't follow instructions. So to get started, anytime you actually approach an RFP or a bid or solicitation, we talked about the different forms this morning. Make sure to watch that video if you haven't watched it. It'll be up later on tonight. But using a compliance matrix will help you ensure every single requirement is addressed that the government contracting officer is seeking for you to uh, in their response. And I would just point out a lot of times, sometimes they have pro forma type of uh, structure that they refer back to, and you got to have your e-verify certificate, you got to have your 1295 in Texas, so forth. You have those kind of things, but most times local government, state governments, and other agencies, including the federal, are in a decision-making process up to the point of where the actual RFP is issued for a year in the making. And that can be, I mean, that's time consuming. And they have a lot of different individuals at the decision making table to make sure that they make a good decision when they hire you, or they contract with you to fulfill that requirement that they have. The whole concept of the theory of the firm, you'll hear me speak about that over and over again. But you have some sort of skill, service, supply that they need, and so they're making sure that they treat everybody equally, and they approach to make sure to help them get what they need to get. So that matrix will help them address that, and have everybody can then check off. I've been involved in some reviews, and how I can see. One thing, the first thing I really learned is there's no school review teaching for the folks who are making these, or sometimes reviewing the information you send to them, especially when it's like the city council, or maybe the pulling together, or maybe community board. I did a lot with local governments, and so they come to the table with with ideas on how they're going to score you, and they're in the process of making sure you're in compliance. And sometimes they don't even understand the compliance requirements. So you have to be aware of that going into it. But having a matrix will help you isolate those requirements. And in fact, in the Q&A period of a contract or a request for proposal, you can sometimes clarify that, because you know what, ultimately at the beginning of a contract, beginning cycles, the burden of what's referred to as the ABCs of writing, the technical writing, the accuracy, the brevity, the clarity, that's the burden of the government. And so they've got to get that RFP ready for you. Now, when you go to comply with it and respond to it, that burden shifts to you. So if you don't see something that's accurate, you don't see something that, it's brief enough, and it's overly wordy, and you don't quite understand, it's not clear, then it's your responsibility to ask that question and make sure that compliance matrix is the correct matrix. The proper structure of an RFP, really, and your response back to them, it makes the evaluator's job easier. Why are you going to complicate something when you don't have to? Okay, so when they tell you that they want your proposal in this particular format, cover letter, cover sheet, they want to, maybe an executive summary, they want your methodologies, they want your past performance, and they want some references, then don't reorder that and put your references first, and put your executive summary near the end. It doesn't. You're making it hard for them, because they're going to have their own compliance sheet, their evaluation criteria. They're going to check it off, and I'm going to, believe me, it's going to be in order. And if they have to go back into that and reorder because you have the standard proposal, a lot of times in business to business transactions, I've got this. If you call me up today and say, "Hey, Mark, I'm ready to buy a year of your service," I'm going to say, "Here's a proposal," and it's probably the same proposal I sent to 10 other people today. Okay, we get that. Okay. Governments are not like that. So you can't do that. You got to restructure the proposal back to that organization. The evaluators themselves score proposals simultaneously. Oftentimes, and nowadays they're using tools like AI and others to do that. So they like to see a structure that's consistent. Consistency is the first step of winning is always following instructions. The second is being consistent in how you approach things, is what I would probably say. So one missing exhibit, one missing requirement can just disqualify you, and everything else perfect. And that is so frustrating when that happens. It's happened to me. I'm like, how did I miss that? So because I didn't really, in fact, I always keep a compliance sheet, but I just forgot to order it the right way. And you have all these files and these structures, and you just don't want to have that happen. So the more structure you have in your organization, how you respond, the better you're going to do. 40% proposals are eliminated for noncompliance. Typically, there's going to be 3 volumes, specifically at the federal level. You're going to have a price. You're going to have excuse me, you're going to have a proposal, technical proposal, the price, and you're going to have your past performance, the typical volumes. Local governments and state governments are a little bit different, but the gist is about the same. Okay, they'll have a little bit more time spent on some other factors that you have to, because it's not so in the federal level, it's really governed by a lot of regulations in place, and with FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, so they have those standards they have to watch. And then L, that's the section, not the big loss, but that's the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation section with submission instructions. And so you can go check. And some of these slides I have are really are federal related. A lot of our customers do serve in the federal space, so we do focus in on that. But state and local is our where we add most value, and the same standards apply for all levels of government. The 3 proposal volumes, like I just spoke to, the technical volume, the past performance volume, and the price volume, almost in every major RFP that you respond to in the local government state sector, you almost always have the price separated in a different way. In the federal government, you're going to use that 1440. Gosh, I lose my numbers this afternoon. I think it's 1449 or 1249. Well, the form that you have to use, whatever SF form that they're using for that particular response, you will fill that out, and and you'll see that there's going to be a place for you to put price in it, and then your past performance listing. Sometimes they'll have CPARs and other places for your performance ratings. I like to give a copy of those sometimes, and when I reply back, I'll just go ahead and include them. And then, of course, the technical approach. and always include, one thing we always to get to do in a technical approach is give them a management plan or organizational chart. So sit down and actually one day, just graph out a organizational chart. There's some excellent tools out there these days to prepare your professional looking chart, but have that in every single response that you send back. It's almost always required, but oftentimes we overlook it, and you'll get yourself gain some points. So that's just another tip I give you is get yourself an organization chart. You don't have to have everybody's name in there. The way you're going to approach something from a technical standpoint from your organization. Now, if you use our Google Drive services, where we basically provide you a drive with a lot of different formats and options to use and so forth, I have everything. We have 6 areas that we organize your data, and one of those is your technical side of things and how you can do it, your method, so that you can have it ready to go. You can pull from it, and you'll find that's helpful to do that. And always, assuming you're going to win. I mean, that's one thing I work with my clients. I said the first thing I tell you is plan on winning. My clients win. And that's important because you need to start thinking about transition. How are you going to take over that multi-year transit, that contract, and then make it work and make it successful to the organization? And so have that plan in your head and ready to go, not just in your head, but in paper, written out, and work on that and perfect it. Okay, continuously perfect your work. You'll find that helpful. Then, of course, on these volumes, you'll always want to have a nice cover letter. I have every client that I work with, I have them go through one exercise. And I always tell them, say, what I want you to do is to take and tell me about the best thing you ever accomplished in business. And if you don't have anything in business quite yet, then in your personal career, tell me about that. The thing you're gonna brag about at the dinner table with your family. You're gonna say, "Guess what I did today?" You will be so proud of me. And that is the thing you're going to want to discuss in your cover letter, because there's nobody going to sell your company like you sell yourself. And that, I think that was just a paraphrasing. Of course, our vice president said that on her campaign recently, but also General Alexander Haig was famous for saying that and said, you got to toot your own horn basically because nobody else is going to do it for you. And if they do, it's going to sound like it's not going to be a freight train coming. So just saying that. So you got to make sure that you got a good cover letter. Okay. And it should be structured the right way, and work on that. That's important. That is the first impression you usually make with any contracting officer. Okay. And in that cover, and anytime I write a cover letter, I always tell them why they should choose me. And believe it or not, the only way they're going to get to choose me is that I get a good score on the evaluation criteria. So that cover letter needs to speak to the evaluation criteria, because governments can't just I can't just pull it out of the air and make this decision to contract with you. I've got to follow the rules, specifically at the federal level. So it's got to speak to those criteria, the evaluation criteria that have been given to you to make sure you are in compliance with it. And then, of course, representations and certifications that you make. These are at the federal level, these are in SAM and Assistant for Award Management. But at the state and local level, we do a lot of representations. And a lot of times these are driven by the state legislatures who tell us there should be, you can't boycott this or you can't do that. You can't, they get together 30, 40 days every year, maybe some of them even longer. I think we should shorten those instead of extending them. But they always come up with something that you need to make sure you agree to as a business owner. And so you got to be aware of those and got to make sure they're active and current and that you're not in violation, and have those ready to go. And certifications as well that are out there if you're going to be a small business or yours or is provided to a service disabled veteran, and also how to use those certifications to your advantage and to insist that they consider you above others that don't have it. Okay. Now, I would never tell anybody to wait on a contract because you don't have your certification in place. But if you do qualify for something, well, my goodness, get out there and get yourself certified. Now, finally, and then you're going to have any kind of required exhibits. A lot of times, this is your resume. You'd be shocked at how many times I see proposals coming back with everybody's resume. It's like they're all looking for jobs. Okay, that's not what the government wants. Okay, okay, they're all it's just all different. My daughter's now, she's got a great job, by the way. And but she redid her resume and it's just really kind of dynamic. And I really liked it. I think it was the right way to do it. And it was very helpful for her getting her great new job. And I won't say where it's at because you'd recognize the company, but she sees the day she got there. Well, that's not the kind of resume they want in these particular proposals. They want it structured. Okay, and everybody in your organization needs to have the same resume style and place in the same way. And you're going to speak to the things that are important within this particular proposal, specifically if they're looking for some sort of skill set. Okay, so it's not you are trying to get a contract, but you're not individually trying to get jobs. So you need to make sure that they're all speaking together. Organizational charts. Have it, a lot nowadays you can do an organizational chart just simply for that proposal and make sure it speaks to the issues at hand within the proposal. And then you will have forms, a lot of different forms in government. Every state's a little bit different, the local government level, but you're going to have some common. Don't, for goodness sakes, don't be waiting to get yourself e-verified if you're going to be doing business in any state that requires e-verification. Or in any state, excuse me, at the federal level now, which is required in most transactions. So it takes you a while, and it's not the easiest system. It's just very frustrating, in fact. So get through that. It could take you a little bit of time to get through that and get some of these forms completed. Some of them require you to have notaries, for example, and you got to make sure you're ready to go. We have inherently built within our system at the bottom. There's a link to a notary, online notary. So if you last minute, but you don't want to do last minute because it's pricey and to get that done. So you want to make sure. But make sure you go through, you check off all the forms that's specified in the solicitation. Do not forget about those required exhibits. Sometimes you think, what am I doing here with these exhibits? And it doesn't matter what you think. You got to get them done. Okay. So be prepared for those. Step one, make sure you read the sections to speak to how things should be organized. In the federal government, in the SAM response in Section L, tells you exactly how to format, and organize your proposal. And you will find that this in the local and state level, they'll also have their own section, typically called format of proposal, format of response. And it'll tell you exactly how to do it, if there's going to be any page limits, if there's any font requirements, if there's any, and believe me, when you see those kind of things, then you need to be very very concerned about those and watch them, make sure you don't violate them, because that means you got somebody who is very peculiar in how they're going to actually escort you. And so you want to make sure you don't go one word over that page limit, because you can find yourself non-responsive in a very quick way. In fact, I always, if I have a page limit requirement at the very end, I'll say end of proposal, beginning of proposal at the beginning, just to be clear which section is within each page limit. Just a trick that I have always chose to do, because that way that I've counted it out, they know I've counted it out, and then they'll appreciate that, and it'll be helpful for them. And sometimes I'll even put it in my table of contents. I'll tell them this said 15-page limit. It is 12 pages, 12 of 15 allowed. And so you help them out. It shows that you've read the instructions and you're following that section that talks about the format of the proposal. And important. And you got margins sometimes, margin size, things of this nature, and what's counted, what's not counted. Font size, margin settings, file format, these are all really important. Okay. A number of, used to, we'd have a lot more printed versions and they had to be bound in certain ways. You have 8 copies. The other day I had 10 copies, and each one of my proposals were over 100 pages long, had to be hand delivered by someone. Okay, so we had it, it was actually hand delivered by the person who bid on it. Helped them write it. It was a huge proposal, several sections, and had to have inserted into between each section a binding. We had a binder first, and then within each section, you had the tabs, and you had to have tab 1 on this. Very specific. They won that contract because we paid attention to what they were asking for. Not always about the final price, believe me. It's about your ability to work with them and not complain too loudly, because that's a part of making a decision on who you want to work with. Um, Numbers of copies, submission methods. It is going to be email, hand delivery. That is sometimes so frustrating to me, because I nowadays, even now, that some of these portals, it's just so that for half times they don't work, and then that's frustrating. And you can't get your password, your username in the last minute. Get all that ready the day before, 2 days before, to make sure that you're there. And not only that, have there for each of them, know who the customer care officer is or something, so you can contact them. Specifically, if you're in states like Texas or California, and they use these fancy systems, sometimes named after the earth or the planets or this or that, whatever. But they're always very frustrating. So, now some of them now will suggest that you're in a live online portal, but then you got to hand deliver the thing. So you got to read into it, not at the last minute, and understand which is which. And when I say hand delivery, that means that it's got to be time stamped by somebody, but usually it's delivered by UPS or FedEx or something. Unless you're in your own community. If I'm in my own community, I hand deliver myself, and I make sure it's done the right way. But have those ready to go, and always practice before you actually submit something. And then make sure you don't do it too early. I had another one the other day that was in a portal. It was the first time you used one of these portals. And then they made an amendment that left the previous document in there. I completed that document. And then they had another document identical to it. That was the amended one. And I did that one too. And then they ruled me non-responsive because I did both of them. Well, I'm like, you asked for both of them. So therefore I felt like I had to do both of them. But they didn't really fully understand it because sometimes you think you're working with, you know, the top of the top procurement officer in the world, and they're frequently sometimes not trained and don't really understand. And this is somewhat new to them. This is not their primary job, and you just got to understand that's the case. And then they get these sophisticated systems, and they think it's easy to use, and not quite easy on the back end. So just be aware of that. So understand the portals, understand the email requirements. Some are hand delivered. Fortunately, most of the federal ones nowadays, you're going to email. But if you have to send something through PIEE, system, I call it PI system. I'm not sure about all the acronyms sometimes. But if you got to do that, you got to give yourself a day or two to get registered properly, sometimes a week. Okay. And know that that can be somewhat frustrating. If you ignore the section for the instructions, boy, that's basically a big no-no. It's the single biggest reason why people are disqualified. Um, and you don't want to have that happen. Okay. So pro tip, create a section L checklist and check every item the night before submission. Also check it along as you go. Make sure everybody has a copy of that. But before you submit it, check everything off. Now, step two, when compliance matrix. So the difference between the two, one is going to be a matrix for, making sure just in a section you got everything like the number of pages, things like that. Okay, so do that. But then you're also going to build an overall compliance matrix. You're going to have your requirements for each of the sections at the federal level. And I probably should have on my slide here given you the names of the sections, so therefore you can see it's the same thing in local and state government. But essentially, is how are you going to write your methods, the way you're going to do things. And methods could be delivery methods. It's not something complex. Or if you're doing services, like I do services, I have to go on location, and I have to go in and actually interview so many people. That's the method. But also potentially is I'm going to drive up in a truck and I'm going to deliver the product that you want, and it's going to have to be delivered in a freight way. So that's a different type of method. So make sure you understand that. And then, the documents that you have to actually complete, the pricing schedule. What is it going to be, units? Is it going to be this, that? Make sure you calculate it the correct way. I see a lot of folks who just don't calculate their bids the right way. That's frustrating too. When you're like, it says there per unit, and then you come in and do something else, and then the numbers don't add up. That's frustrating. Um, Also, column two is where you address it in your proposal. Make sure you know every item they want, and then where you did it. Usually, I'll go in and place a number. Like this is page number 2. I discussed this issue. Page number 3. Okay, section, heading, so forth. Column 3, page number, fill it in after you write, and then column 4, a status. So this would be an ideal compliance matrix, 4 columns, and then you step it off every item that you have to do. Okay, start the matrix before you write. And for those of us who are using, the tools, you and like I do, and just sell it to build you a compliance matrix. Now, if you're not comfortable just yet, I mean, I work with use of AI tools, probably 5-6 hours out of the day nowadays, and so I'm comfortable with them. If you're not, be careful how you use these. Make sure because I call it taming the dragon. I always have a whole session on how to tame the dragon because it can quickly burn you up if you don't be careful. You don't want to have that happen. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to practice. Okay, practice a lot. Write your own matrix first, and then maybe have your systems that you're using build it. A lot of us, if you're only doing 1 or 2 proposals a year, it's not really cost effective to do that. It'd almost be better to hire me. We can do that for you. So give us a shot at that. We do a good job. But you can do that just by writing it in hand. uh, and the document itself, and use that as your official roadmap to begin with. But then move to online systems. I everything we're going through. I've got 42 RFPs on our board right this minute, and the folks are writing with us. And so we've got a lot of different moving parts, and we have to do it all in a scalable way. And so that's important that we do that. You will want to do it too, but you're not going to have quite that many probably. Build your proposal online. Okay. That's exactly the way it can be done now. You will have to actually do that in some of the systems. So practice with that. Okay. And you do that so that you know where the information goes. You can cut and paste, and well, I build everything out in my Google Drive to start with, but then it seems that I have to put everything onto some sort of PDF, and then it doesn't come out right, and it gets frustrating. Boy, well, I'll tell you that much. Nowadays, thank goodness, some of the tools will actually just fill in your PDF for you. So here's the information I want. I've already written it out. I just put it into this this darn PDF because it's not the easiest to work with sometimes. And sometimes they have them protected. Sometimes they don't have it protected. And the people who build the forms aren't really quite accustomed to how to build them, or they went to a class on this and got it, make it too sophisticated. It's just very frustrating sometimes. So build that proposal first online. Use the same headings and numbering, the subsection order is required. Just the basics there. Include every required exhibit as a placeholder, even if not yet written. Every one of my documents are built in a Google Drive, and I have here it's an insert cost of, certificate of insurance here, and I'll leave that there. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and do an image and put the image on to the drive. Although I don't usually don't want to do that in the actual document that I send. I'm not going to send a Word document with huge images in it because that's going to exceed the memory that they allow, or I forget the words we might want to use there. But so you want to make sure it's in a PDF and it's prepared the right way. And then share the outline with every writer before any section is drafted. So everybody who's working with you, make sure you're all collaboratively working together with some collaborative tool. That's why we allow you to build that Google Drive online now and build up to 4 users within your accounts with us. Okay. And then step 4, assign writers, owners, and deadlines. Give everybody an assignment. And we have an assignment system here. So our clients sometimes they think, what is going on? Because we're shipping them these rules back and forth. But we keep them, I'm a big believer in transparency, so they know what's happening, they can see our work. And it tells who's doing what. And they're like, I thought this was just you, Mark. And then I'm thinking we got about 20 individuals working on these things. It's not just me. I'm the face of the organization, but we have a great team, graduate level trained research staff know how to write and know how to do things. And so we're assigning them out, and we're also, and I would just point out here, we review. And every one of our documents that we write, I review probably 8 times on average, I would guess. So you need to be doing the same thing. When I say review, we're scoring ourselves. We go through because there is no. Let me just tell you about scoring and evaluation criteria in compliance. Compliance is easy enough to score. So that's why that's probably why people are rule non-responsive so often. Because if I'm a person without a lot of training, I can go in there and tell you if a form is not there or not, and I can just strike you. Okay, that's easy enough. Now, if I really want to evaluate a proposal and the writing and the knowledge that's required in a topic that I traditionally don't have, you're the subject matter expert, for goodness sakes. And that's a little harder. Okay. And so there is no school. They're not really, the training on that side is not that great. I mean, I teach a graduate school class, and we hardly ever touch this part about actually scoring or evaluating. We spend so much time on preparing the actual documents that's just sort of a bygone, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to score it differently. You'd be shocked at how many times I get a report back on how I was scored in a transaction, and it's just basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so they just rank me with others, and so that's not really, So all of a sudden, if you got straight 5s and you got a score of 100, and somebody gets straight 1s, you got a score of 5. Okay, that's not really fair. I'm not a 5. So just know that. So you should review, and you can use the tools that are available. Say, here are the evaluation criteria. Evaluate, and go in there and just score it, and then redo it, and make suggestions on how to do it. And you'll find that is a strategy that puts you up there for the first time. And I have been writing for a long time. I finally got a score of 100 on a RFP that I wrote the other day, and for someone. And I teach the subject. Okay, so just so you know, it's not easy to get that 100. And so I'm waiting to see if we win, and which I'm hoping we do, because that'll be a success story there for this client. But it's very difficult to get that. We get a 100% match. So this is the one that you wanted to find. This is the one you're going to win, and you want to have confidence when you do that. So give each writer that evaluation criteria that's relevant to their section, and you tell them, you said, you got to get me 100 on this part. Now it's difficult to do that. They should try. Then set some sort of deadline, 3 days out. I got one yesterday afternoon. We had 3 hour deadlines on each part of it. Okay. Because this client really wants it. It's a $300,000 transaction, and it's important to them, very important. So we've got a deadline, 24 hours that we have sliced up, and we will have it met. And unfortunately for her, I had this hour set aside for you guys. So that's kind of throwing them off just a little bit, but we'll be up a little bit later tonight to get this thing done. And also during the soccer tournament, I mean, you got all these things. I'm just leading into that a little bit, but things will interrupt you. Work expands though to fill the time, available for its completion, and that's a vice versa too. That's a business thing we all work with, and you got to make it work. And so know those times and those time constraints, the external factors, what's somebody's mood going to be when the USA team loses. Ugh, puts everybody in a foul mood today, and it is what it is. So, but you don't want to. Things can come into the process of writing an RFP response. One person must own the final integration, formatting, compliance check. Okay, give them ownership of it. That is really important in this process. And then step 5, run a final compliance check before you submit it. Walk through your compliance matrix row by row. Every item has to be complete. Don't put it off. Make sure it's complete. I'm one of the worst at trying to put things off, but I've got one due tomorrow that's we've already checked it off. Everything's there, and it's a matter. I'm waiting for the client to get back to us, but it's there, ready to go. Okay, I took ownership for it. We will have it ready to go. We'll submit tomorrow at 1:30, and all I need right now is the final price. If you're doing the federal, reread the section, that deals section L, but in the local government or the state government, reread the format. Make sure you didn't miss something. The biggest ones we miss is the font size, the margin size, the small things that like the page counts, the file size itself. That's important that we don't send them a 20 megabyte when they said only 10. Okay. And that's not good. Confirm all signatures. That's another one that's always, I swear sometimes I think that Adobe has it in for me because I think it's there, and then I upload it and I open it up, it's not there. I actually turned one in the other day. A whole document was completed, and then they sent back and said you were not in compliance. I'm like, what are you talking about? They said the document, the PDF wasn't completed. I said, here it is. It was completed. Um, but it wasn't on their end. And so they didn't give me the benefit of the doubt. They just said, you're not in compliance. So you need to make sure that everything's there that you say is there. And so whenever you do upload something, make sure you download everything. Okay. So you're gonna have these things these are ways to learn. I call them, it's just tips, and there's a pro tip there. Have someone else look at what you did too. So always now we have another check, and in the process of having someone else check it, right? And make sure it's all there for the final. And some of these stories I exaggerate a little bit on how we do these things, just to kind of emphasize the importance of them. But it's very rare that I'm not compliant, just so you know. Okay, and some mistakes to avoid. Okay, these are things that are so important that these are the things that you just don't want to happen. Okay, because they're just like, what is this guy doing? First, not doing a compliance matrix. You know, just say here and spent. You gave me an hour of your time, and I'm very thankful and appreciative of that. Because I like this type of subject. I told you we were going to be enthusiastic. Hopefully, you're sensing that. I want you to do a good job, but don't go out and say, "Goodness, I only had 10 more days to get this done," and forget to do the compliance matrix because you're so compressed on other things. Then you miss a whole section completely. You don't have that. Exceeding page limits. Okay, a lot of times I'll take your bid, your response, and then they'll just stop at that point, and they will do that. Okay, the next 10 pages, which is have the meat of your proposal, is not included. They can't look at it. Okay, so and they have to treat everybody the same. So Actually, I'll see that happen too. With sometimes when you're it's the second phase when you're actually pitching, and they say you got 3 minutes, and that's all you got, and so time stops. You can't complete. I've had that happen to me. I'm like, ugh, that's frustrating. And then you didn't get out the parts that you really want to get out. So practice that part too. If you're doing an oral presentation or oral response, then you need to have somebody lead time you do all those guys. Using the wrong fonts or margins. I'm not even going to give you the benefit of the doubt there. That just means you're not paying attention. Missing the required signature certifications or representation. This can happen specifically when you're in an organization. I have one, this guy, $3 million transaction, $3 million. He did a really fabulous job preparing it, pulling it all together, sent it up to his boss for signature. His boss, and it had like three places for the boss. The boss signed it one place, didn't sign it the other two places. Nobody checked, sent it off, lost the contract. He would have won that contract. They told him that in the debrief, but he didn't follow instructions, missed the signatures, and therefore it was not a valid proposal. Um, just don't want to happen. Writing beautifully, but failing to address the actual stated requirements. Mr. Chat GPT, I remind him very often. Just one, we use multiple versions here of AI, but the Chat just does it right. They writes very well for some reason. And the other day, it was one that said, we should just skip this proposal and write a book together. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, we don't want to write a book. We got a 10-page limit. Come on, focus, tame the dragon. But it can just look like the best thing since sliced bread, but you didn't address the actual stated requirements. So don't get flattery. Will get you nowhere. And some of these systems like to flatter you, believe it or not. It's like they almost think that you're gonna get rid of them. They don't want to have that happen. So yeah, I'm diverting a little bit. I'm actually very I'm curious about how all these things work. I'm just at that age. I'm not quite there. They're writing beautifully, but failing to address the actual stated requirements. That's something you don't want to do. And then finally, missing the deadline. Man, that happened to me. 1 minute because I was doing these portals. As I was going in there to actually submit the proposal, it started asking me questions about how you learned about the portal, how you who referred you, did you like it? Do you give it a 5 star? I'm like, this has nothing to do with the RFP. Get out of my way. And then I was 1 minute late and I didn't take it. It wouldn't submit. I was so frustrated. I thought I was going to lose my cool then, but I didn't. You just learn and you move on. But there's zero exceptions in government contracting. It's very rare. It's not that it doesn't always. If sometimes on open calls they'll let you slide in a little bit. That will let you slide in. So don't give up if that happens to you. But if it does, that's just a timing issue, and it can happen. Believe me, you got a lot of people at the table. It can happen. Proposal structure plan. When you leave here today, these are the things I want you to do. Make sure you take an RFP, bid, solicitation, read that, format of proposal section. Do that before you write any single word in any RFP that you're working with. Build a compliance matrix. Just say, this is how I'm going to actually set one up, and then keep it as a template. Okay. Assign each section. Go ahead and get you like an assignment matrix of some sort where you actually have everybody's name, who's good at what, and then have them build on that. If you've got an organization of more than one or two, if you don't, if you're a single person organization, I would encourage you to get a friend so you can phone a friend and let them look at something. They'll do it for you. Okay. And their advice and their responses are just as valid as the city council person who's been elected to represent their constituency. Okay. So just so you know, their advice will help you as well. Sign each section said, set your internal deadlines and understand how they're going to work and how long it takes for each type. And then run a final compliance check. Just go through this as a trial to understand how it really works before you actually take a proposal and then you actually have one you're going to refer back to. So there we are with lesson one. And I would just share with you, I'm going to open up the questions in just a minute here in the chat, but come to our website. We monitor 88,000 agencies. So it says there's SAM, the System for Award Management is just one system. Those are the 25,000 federal. That's actually our free tier level. Over 80% of information completely free at no charge. We cover all 50 states, US, Canada provinces, and now Mexico states as well. And so in any transaction that devolves from them, so we're in 72 countries. So we really value your participation and use of our services. You can sign up free at govdirections.com if you're not there already. If you're on YouTube, the daily alerts are by far one of our beloved products that people really like. In fact, we've delivered over 1 billion bit alerts now since we started some 28 years ago. And it's not just that alert now. We have the war alert, War Department alert, which is just those bids that are from the Defense Logistics Agency, the world's largest buyer, the basic gold standard procurement in the world. We have a set aside alert, which is now specialized in not only the federal set asides, but also state and local and diversity and equity inclusive type projects projects that are out there, and making sure you're aware of those. And then of course we have the top bid, which is an SMS alert that comes to you. So keep watching those. We're trying to alert you in different ways to make sure you don't miss the perfect opportunity. So I encourage you to stop by. And so thank you and have a great day. If you're in the room today, you can just hold off for 1 second. I'll let me get off YouTube Live. But if you're at YouTube Live, please reach down there and subscribe to our channel. We certainly appreciate that. And also, if you did enjoy this session, freely available to you, click there that you like, and it helps us reach our audience. Thank you.